The crystalline halls of Sunspire Academy hummed with nervous energy as students from 17 different species gathered in the grand assembly chamber. The massive domed structure stretched impossibly high above them, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that responded to the collective emotional state of the crowd. Today, those patterns flickered an ominous amber, a sign that even the building itself sensed the tension in the air. Commander Xylith, the Academy's Velteran director, stood at the podium with her forearms folded behind her back, her silver eyes scanning the crowd with characteristic intensity. Her pale blue skin seemed to glow under the chamber's adaptive lighting, and the ceremonial marks etched into her forehead indicated her rank as a veteran of the Centauri conflict, one of the bloodiest wars in galactic history. Cadets, her voice echoed through the chamber's bioacoustic walls, each word carrying the weight of absolute authority. Today marks the beginning of your final practical assessment. For the next 7 solar cycles, you will be divided into mixed species teams and dropped onto uninhabited worlds with nothing but basic survival gear. A ripple of excitement and anxiety passed through the assembled students like a wave. Marcus Thompson, one of only 12 humans at the prestigious Interstellar Military Academy, felt his heart rate spike as adrenaline flooded his system. At 22 standard years old, he was considered ancient by Academy standards. Most species began their military training in their equivalent of early adolescence. Humans, however, required more time to develop the mental disciplines necessary for interstellar warfare. Beside him, his roommate Kextar, a hulking Chronari with chitinous armor plating that gleamed like polished obsidian, clicked his mandibles nervously. The sound was barely audible, but Marcus had learned to read the subtle signs of his friend's anxiety over their 2 years together. Despite standing nearly 3 meters tall and possessing natural armor that could deflect plasma bolts, Kextar was surprisingly gentle and prone to worry. "The rules are simple," Commander Xylith continued, her forearms spreading wide in a gesture that encompassed the entire assembly. "Survive, adapt, overcome. Teams that fail to establish a sustainable presence within the time limit will be immediately expelled from the Academy. No exceptions, no second chances, no appeals." The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the bioacoustic walls and the barely perceptible breathing of 500 cadets. Marcus could feel the weight of those words settling over the crowd like a heavy blanket. Expulsion from Sunspire Academy didn't just mean the end of a military career. It meant returning to your home world in disgrace, branded as a failure in the eyes of your entire species. Marcus exchanged glances with his fellow humans scattered throughout the crowd. They all knew the statistics that were never officially published but whispered about in dormitory corridors and study halls. Humans had the highest dropout rate at Sunspire Academy, not because they lacked intelligence or courage, but because they were considered the weakest species in terms of raw physical capabilities. They couldn't regenerate lost limbs like the Hydrons, couldn't survive in vacuum like the Void Walkers, and couldn't phase through solid matter like the Ethereals. What humans did possess was something more subtle but equally valuable, an almost supernatural ability to adapt to impossible circumstances. It was this trait that had earned them a place at the Academy despite their physical limitations, though many of their classmates remained skeptical about humanity's contribution to the Galactic Military Alliance. Your team assignments have been carefully calculated to test not just your individual capabilities, but your ability to function as a cohesive unit despite fundamental biological and cultural differences, Commander Xylith announced, her silver eyes seeming to focus directly on Marcus for a moment. "You will find that success requires more than just surviving. It requires learning to see strength in what others might consider weakness." The bioacoustic walls pulsed brighter, responding to the surge of nervous energy from the assembled students. Marcus felt his palms growing damp with perspiration, a distinctly human response that he knew his alien classmates would find both fascinating and slightly disgusting. Team assignments will be posted within the hour. Use this time to review your survival protocols and prepare your gear. Remember, cadets, in the vacuum of space, there is no room for species prejudice or individual ego. You succeed together or you fail alone. Commander Xylith's forearms folded back behind her, and she stepped away from the podium with fluid grace. Dismissed. As the chamber erupted into anxious chatter, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this assessment would be different. Something about the commander's tone, the way she had looked at him, suggested this wasn't just another survival exercise. There was something deeper at work here, something that would test not just their ability to survive, but their ability to understand what it truly meant to be part of something greater than themselves. The bioluminescent walls continued to pulse amber, and Marcus wondered if they would still be alive to see them turn blue again. The team roster appeared on Marcus's data pad with a soft chime that seemed to echo ominously in the sudden silence of his dormitory room. He had been pacing for the better part of an hour, his standard-issue boots wearing a pattern in the adaptive flooring that shifted color with each step. Now, as he stared at the glowing display, he felt his stomach drop like a stone thrown into a gravity well. Team 7. Marcus Thompson, Human, Tactical Analysis Specialist. Velana Silverwind, Ethereal, Energy Manipulation Expert. Gorthire Hyde, Stone Skin, Heavy Assault Specialist. 6RA Swiftclaw, Raptor, Reconnaissance and Tracking. Ninja Voidwalker, Umbral, Stealth Operations. 5 species. 5 completely different evolutionary paths that had never been meant to work together. By the Academy's own admission, this was one of the most diverse team compositions possible, and by the looks of it, Marcus was the only one without natural armor, enhanced strength, or supernatural abilities. His designation as Tactical Analysis Specialist felt like a polite way of saying the one who thinks while everyone else does the real work. The team meeting was scheduled for Briefing Room 7, a sterile white chamber located in the Academy's central hub. The room featured adaptive furniture that could adjust to accommodate any species' physical requirements, from the crystalline perches preferred by the ethereals to the reinforced platforms needed for stone skin physiology. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, his standard-issue survival pack slung over his shoulder, and spent the time reviewing each of his teammates' species files. Ethereals were beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form over 1,000,000 years ago. They could phase through solid matter, manipulate electromagnetic fields, and survive in environments that would instantly kill most organic life. However, they required constant energy input and became dangerously unstable in high-radiation environments. Stone skins were living geological formations from the high-gravity world of Petra Prime. Their silicon-based bodies could withstand temperatures that would melt steel and pressure that would crush a starship hull. They were nearly immortal by most standards, but their massive size and weight made them incredibly slow and energy inefficient. Raptors were apex predators from the jungle world of Verdania. Their enhanced senses could track prey across continents. Their reflexes were faster than most species could perceive, and their natural weapons could slice through military-grade armor. They were also notoriously aggressive and had difficulty working with species they considered prey. Umbrals were shadow dwellers from the perpetually dark world of Nyx. They could become completely invisible, manipulate darkness itself, and move through shadows as easily as walking through air. In bright light, however, they became as vulnerable as any normal humanoid. Marcus was still reviewing the files when Velana materialized rather than walked through the door, her translucent form shimmering with inner light that cast dancing patterns on the walls. The ethereals didn't move in the traditional sense, they simply ceased to exist in one location and began existing in another, a process that never failed to make Marcus's human brain struggle with the implications. "You're early," she observed, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. An admirable trait in carbon-based life forms. "Punctuality is a survival skill," Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. He had interacted with ethereals before, but their casual disregard for the physical laws that governed his existence always left him feeling slightly disoriented. Gortha's arrival was announced by a tremor that ran through the floor and walls. The massive stone skin had to duck to fit through the doorway, his crystalline hide scraping against the frame with a sound like grinding mountains. Each step sent vibrations through the room that Marcus could feel in his bones. "Greetings, small ones," Gortha's voice rumbled with the deep bass of shifting tectonic plates. "I trust we are prepared for the challenges ahead?" Before Marcus could respond, Zixare bounded into the room with liquid grace that spoke of perfect muscle control and predatory confidence. Her scaled form was a study in deadly efficiency, from her retractable claws to her powerful tail that could snap bones with a casual flick. She looked at Marcus with golden eyes that seemed to catalog every weakness, every vulnerability. So, her voice was a low purr that carried undertones of barely controlled aggression. "We're stuck with the soft skin." Finally, Ninja seemed to step out of a shadow that Marcus could have sworn wasn't there a moment before. The Umbral's dark form was barely visible even in the room's bright lighting, more suggestion than substance, like a living piece of the void between stars. The human appears adequate. Ninja's voice was a whisper that somehow carried perfectly to every corner of the room. Though I question the wisdom of including such a fragile species in a survival scenario. Marcus felt the weight of their collective skepticism pressing down on him like a physical force. Here he was, surrounded by beings who could manipulate reality itself, and they were questioning whether he deserved to be here at all. "I have a name," Marcus said calmly, his voice carrying a quiet strength that seemed to surprise his teammates. "And I suggest we focus on our combined strengths rather than our individual perceived weaknesses." Gortha's laugh rumbled like an avalanche. "Strengths? What exactly do humans bring to survival situations? You have no armor, no claws, no special abilities. You break easily." "We adapt," Marcus said simply. "That's what we do." Thelana's form flickered with what might have been amusement. "Adapt? Child, I can phase through solid matter. Gorth is nearly indestructible. 6RA can track prey across continents. Ninja can become invisible at will. What can you adapt to that we cannot simply overcome?" Marcus pulled out his datapad and projected a holographic display of their assigned world, Kepler 442c, a harsh desert planet with extreme temperature variations and limited water sources. According to the briefing, this world has killed 3 previous teams. 2 Chronari-led groups and 1 mixed team with a Stoneskin leader. All physically superior species. All dead within 4 cycles. The room fell silent. Maybe, Marcus continued, raw power isn't the answer to every problem. The transport ship Valkyrie's wing shuddered violently as it entered Kepler 442c's atmosphere, its reinforced hull groaning under the stress of atmospheric entry. The vessel was a converted military dropship, its interior stripped down to bare essentials, magnetic harnesses, environmental controls, and enough life support to keep them alive during the descent. Through the reinforced viewport, Marcus could see an endless expanse of red-orange sand dunes that stretched to the horizon like a frozen sea of fire, broken only by jagged obsidian rock formations that jutted from the surface like the bones of some ancient giant. The planet's twin suns blazed overhead with merciless intensity, their combined light turning the atmosphere into a shimmering curtain of heat distortion. Even through the ship's protective filters, Marcus could feel the radiation pressing against his skin like invisible flames. This was a world that had been forged in stellar fire and had never known the gentle touch of cooling rain. "Environmental readings coming in," announced Lieutenant Cray, the ship's Zephyrian pilot, his voice crackling through the intercom with interference from the planet's electromagnetic field. "Temperature at drop zone, 47 degrees Celsius and rising toward the daily peak of 60. Nighttime low, minus 23 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric pressure, 0.8 standard. Air composition, breathable for all species with standard filtration gear, but I'm detecting trace amounts of silicon dust that could cause respiratory issues over extended exposure." Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the ship's climate control. He glanced at his teammates, noting their reactions to the harsh environmental data. Thelana's ethereal form was already beginning to flicker more rapidly, a sign that the planet's intense electromagnetic field was interfering with her energy matrix. Gortha's massive stone body showed stress fractures appearing along his joints, thermal shock from the rapid temperature changes of atmospheric entry. 6RA's breathing had become shallow and rapid, her predatory instincts warning her of an environment where even apex predators could become prey to the elements themselves. Commander Xylitha's voice crackled through the intercom with the weight of final authority. "Team 7, you have exactly 7 minutes to review your final briefing before drop. Your survival kits contain water purification tablets sufficient for 2 days, compressed nutrient bars for 3 days, and basic shelter materials rated for extreme temperature variations. Everything else, water sources, food, permanent shelter, medical supplies, you must find, create, or do without." Marcus quickly pulled up the mission parameters on his ruggedized datapad, the screen dimming automatically to account for the harsh light streaming through the viewport. The goal appeared deceptively simple: establish a base camp capable of supporting all 5 team members, secure reliable food and water sources that could sustain them indefinitely, and send a success signal using the provided emergency beacon by sunset on the 7th day. Simple in theory, potentially lethal in practice. The fine print made his blood run cold. 3 previous teams had attempted the same mission on Kepler 442c. two Chronari-led assault teams had died within the first cycle, their natural armor proving useless against the planet's extreme temperature swings. A third team, led by a stone-skin engineer, had survived 4 days before their emergency beacon had gone silent. The Academy's recovery drones had found only empty shelters and scattered equipment, the fate of the team members themselves remaining a mystery. Approaching drop zone, Lieutenant Cray announced, his voice tight with professional concern. Thermal readings indicate surface temperature is now 52 degrees and climbing. Recommend immediate shelter establishment upon touchdown. The team gathered around the drop platform, a circular metal disc surrounded by emergency force fields that would protect them during the descent. Each member checked their gear one final time, going through the ritual motions that had been drilled into them during countless training exercises. Marcus noticed something his teammates didn't, small details that might prove crucial in the hours ahead. Velana's energy form was dimming significantly in the planet's harsh electromagnetic environment. Her usual brilliant luminescence reduced to a faint glow that flickered like a candle in a hurricane. Gortha's rocky exterior showed hairline cracks spreading along his crystalline structure, thermal stress fractures that would only worsen once they reached the surface. 6RA kept licking her lips unconsciously, her body already beginning to dehydrate from the dry, superheated air. Ninja's shadow form was becoming increasingly unstable, his darkness powers flickering erratically as the twin sun's intense light overwhelmed his natural abilities. "Ready?" Marcus asked, though he could see the answer in their strained expressions. "Born ready, soft skin," Zixare snarled, but Marcus caught the slight tremor in her voice, not fear, but the beginning of physiological stress as her body struggled to adapt to the hostile environment. The platform's safety lights shifted from amber to red. "Drop in 10 seconds, Lieutenant Cray announced. Marcus took a deep breath, tasting the recycled air of the ship one last time. In a few moments, they would be committed to 7 days of survival in one of the most hostile environments in known space. 3 teams had failed. His team couldn't afford to be the 4th. The platform dropped and the real test began. By the time they reached the towering obsidian formations, the true cost of their natural advantages had become devastatingly clear. What should have been a simple 50-meter sprint across open ground had become a desperate race against physiological collapse. The sand beneath their feet radiated heat like the surface of a forge, and the air itself seemed to burn with each labored breath. Velana was barely corporeal now, her ethereal form flickering like a damaged hologram. The intense electromagnetic radiation from Kepler 442c's twin suns was wreaking havoc on her energy matrix, causing painful static discharges that made her cry out in harmonics that hurt Marcus's ears. Each step toward the rocks required enormous effort as she fought to maintain physical cohesion in an environment that was systematically tearing apart her very essence. "I can't, the interference is too strong," she gasped, her voice distorting as her form wavered between solid and translucent. "My energy patterns are destabilizing. I may not be able to maintain coherence much longer." Gortha's condition was equally alarming. The massive stone-skin silicon-based body evolved to withstand the crushing pressures of high-gravity worlds was developing serious thermal stress fractures that spiderwebbed across his crystalline hide like a shattered window. The extreme temperature differential between the planet's blazing surface and his cooler internal core was causing his molecular structure to expand and contract at different rates, threatening to literally tear him apart from within. "The thermal shock," he rumbled, his voice cracking like breaking stone, "it's worse than a plasma bombardment. My body, it wasn't designed for this kind of heat variance. I can feel my structural integrity failing." 6RA, the apex predator whose enhanced metabolism had made her the terror of Verdania's jungles, was now panting heavily through her fanged maw. Her reptilian physiology, perfectly adapted for brief bursts of explosive speed and strength, was burning through her energy reserves at an unsustainable rate. Sweat poured from her scaled hide, carrying away precious electrolytes and leaving her increasingly disoriented. "This is impossible," she snarled, though the sound lacked her usual predatory confidence. "My hunting instincts are screaming that this environment is death. Every fiber of my being is telling me to find shade and wait for nightfall, but we don't have time for that luxury." Ninja had suffered perhaps the most dramatic reversal of fortune. In the blazing light of the twin suns, his shadow manipulation abilities had completely abandoned him, leaving him as vulnerable as any ordinary humanoid. Without his darkness powers, he moved with visible uncertainty, his fluid grace replaced by awkward stumbling as he tried to navigate a world where he could no longer bend shadows to his will. "I am diminished," he whispered, his voice hollow with the shock of sudden mortality. "For the first time in my adult life, I cast a shadow instead of commanding them. The light burns away everything I am." Marcus pulled out his emergency shelter with practiced efficiency, his movements economical and purposeful while his teammates struggled with their failing abilities. The reflective emergency blanket snapped open with a metallic whisper, and he quickly secured it between two rock outcroppings, creating a triangular shelter that immediately dropped the temperature by 15 crucial degrees. "Everyone inside," he commanded, his voice carrying an authority that surprised even himself. "Move slowly to conserve energy, breathe through your nose to retain moisture, and stay in the deepest shade available." As his teammates collapsed gratefully into the shelter's protective shadow, Marcus began unpacking his survival equipment with methodical precision. Unlike his companions, he wasn't fighting against his nature, he was working with it. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters on harsh savanna worlds, creatures who succeeded not through overwhelming strength or supernatural abilities, but through endurance, adaptability, and the intelligence to create tools that extended their capabilities. "This will buy us time," Marcus explained as he activated the shelter's thermal regulation system. "But we need water immediately, and we need a permanent solution before the temperature peaks in 3 hours. Zixare slumped against the shelter wall, her predatory pride warring with the humbling reality of her situation. The briefing mentioned that the previous teams died looking for water. 3 separate expeditions, all led by species with superior physical capabilities. They never found sustainable water sources. "Because they looked in the wrong places and the wrong ways," Marcus replied, pulling a compact electronic device from his survival pack. The moisture detector was a marvel of human engineering, a tool created by a species that had learned to find water in the most unlikely locations because their survival had depended on it. The device hummed softly as it calibrated to the local atmosphere, its sensors analyzing humidity levels, mineral traces, and electromagnetic signatures that might indicate underground water sources. After a few tense moments, it beeped softly and pointed toward the deeper rock formations with unwavering certainty. "There," Marcus announced with quiet confidence. "Underground aquifer approximately 50 meters down through solid rock. Accessible with the right equipment and approach." Gortha's laugh was bitter, the sound like grinding tectonic plates. 50 meters through solid obsidian? "I'm the strongest member of this team, and I couldn't drill through that much rock even under ideal conditions. In this heat, my body would fracture completely before I made it halfway. I could phase down to the water source," Velena offered weakly, her form flickering with the effort of speech. "But I don't have enough stable energy to phase back up carrying water. The electromagnetic interference would disperse me completely." Marcus was already pulling out another tool, a compact sonic drill that looked almost absurdly small compared to the massive task ahead. "Human engineering," he said simply. "We learned long ago that when you can't overpower a problem, you have to think around it." 3 hours later, Marcus had struck water. The sonic drill had penetrated deep into the rock, and cool, clear water began flowing into their collection containers. His teammates watched in amazement as the human who had appeared weakest among them single-handedly solved their most critical problem. "Incredible," Velena murmured, her form growing brighter as she absorbed some of the water's hydrogen ions. "But water is only the beginning. We still need food, and the heat will return tomorrow." Marcus nodded, pulling out his datapad to review the local ecosystem data. The planet has a day-night cycle of 26 hours. The temperature swings are extreme, but they're predictable. We can use that. He began sketching a design on the ground with a stick. "We build a thermal regulation system. During the day, we use the heat to power thermoelectric generators. At night, we use the cold to create condensation for additional water collection." Zixare's ears perked up. "And food?" "My enhanced senses can't detect any large prey animals." "Because you're looking for large prey," Marcus replied. "Humans learn to eat everything. Watch." He moved to a crevice in the rocks and began carefully extracting what looked like ordinary stones. Under closer examination, they revealed themselves to be a form of slow-moving, silicon-based life forms. "Mineral feeders," Marcus explained. They're not animals as we understand them, but they're rich in nutrients and completely safe to eat. The other teams probably walked right past them. Gorth rumbled with what might have been respect. You see resources where we see obstacles. That's the point, Marcus said, beginning to prepare their meal. Every species here evolved to be superior to humans in some way. You're stronger, faster, more durable. But superiority in one area often means dependency on that area. As night fell and the temperature plummeted, Marcus's thermal regulation system proved its worth. The shelters maintained a comfortable temperature while generating enough power to run their equipment. The condensation collectors began producing fresh water, and the mineral feeders provided a sustainable food source. I don't understand, Ninja said as they sat around their improvised heating unit. Your species survived to reach space travel despite being physically inferior to almost everyone else. How? Marcus smiled, stirring their dinner. We learned that being physically inferior doesn't mean being actually inferior. It just means being different. Every problem has multiple solutions. We just learned to find the ones that didn't require us to be something we're not. On the fourth day, their communication array crackled to life with an unexpected transmission that shattered the routine they had established. The sound was so sudden and sharp in the quiet of their efficiently organized camp that all 5 team members froze in their various activities. Marcus had been calibrating their water collection system, Velana was practicing energy conservation techniques, Gorth was reinforcing their shelter foundations, 6RA was mapping local mineral feeder colonies, and Ninja was testing his slowly returning shadow abilities in the pre-dawn darkness. Commander Xylatha's voice emerged through the static with an urgency that immediately set everyone on edge. Her usual composed authority carried undertones of something that might have been surprise or perhaps concern. Team 7, respond immediately. This is a priority communication. Marcus quickly activated the response channel, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency across the communication console he had modified to work more reliably in the planet's harsh electromagnetic environment. Team 7 reporting, Commander. All 5 members alive, healthy, and maintaining mission parameters. There was a pause that stretched longer than normal transmission delays would account for. When Commander Xylatha's voice returned, it carried a note of genuine disbelief that was completely at odds with her usual unflappable demeanor. Impossible. According to our orbital sensor arrays and atmospheric monitoring stations, your shelter systems are operating at 127% of theoretical maximum efficiency. You've established 3 separate resource collection points, your water production exceeds consumption by a factor of 4, and our biological scanners indicate you've developed a sustainable food cultivation system. How is any of this possible? Marcus exchanged glances with his teammates, seeing his own confusion reflected in their expressions. Teamwork, Commander. And human ingenuity applied to problems that required unconventional solutions. Another pause, this one even longer and filled with what sounded like muffled conversations in the background. When the commander spoke again, her voice carried the weight of a revelation that changed everything they thought they knew about their mission. Team 7, I need you to understand something crucial about your current situation. This assessment was never designed to test your basic survival skills or your ability to endure harsh conditions. It was specifically engineered to test your collective ability to overcome species-based limitations through genuine cooperation and adaptive thinking. Velana's ethereal form flickered with confusion, her energy patterns betraying her emotional state. What exactly do you mean, Commander? Are you saying our survival wasn't the real objective? The previous teams that died on this world, and I want to be completely transparent with you about this, all failed because they relied exclusively on their species' natural evolutionary advantages. When those advantages proved inadequate or counterproductive in Kepler 442c's environment, they had no backup strategies, no alternative approaches, no ability to adapt their thinking to match their circumstances. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine despite the shelter's carefully maintained temperature. You're saying this entire scenario was specifically designed to neutralize our natural abilities and force us to find other solutions? Precisely. Every environmental factor on this planet was chosen to systematically undermine the typical advantages that each of your species brings to survival situations. The electromagnetic interference disrupts ethereal energy manipulation. The thermal extremes cause structural failure in stone skin physiology. The lack of large prey animals negates raptor hunting instincts. The constant daylight eliminates umbral shadow powers. Gortha's massive form shifted with what Marcus had learned to recognize as deep contemplation, his voice rumbling with new understanding. And humans were placed on this team because we are the only species that had to learn to survive without any natural advantages in the first place. The greatest military tacticians and strategic thinkers in galactic history have all shared one critical trait, Commander Xylith continued, her voice taking on the tone of a lecture that was clearly years in the making. The ability to find solutions that don't depend on having the biggest weapons, the strongest armor, or the most devastating natural abilities. They succeed by thinking differently, by seeing possibilities that others miss, by turning apparent weaknesses into unexpected strengths. 6Ra's tail lashed with a mixture of frustration and dawning comprehension. So this entire exercise was designed to humble us? To prove that our natural gifts are worthless? No, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying a certainty that surprised even himself. It was designed to teach us that our differences are assets, not liabilities. We don't need to become human to succeed, we need to learn to think beyond the limitations of what we've always been and discover what we could become when we work together. The communication channel fell silent except for the soft hum of their life support systems and the distant whisper of wind across the planet's surface. In that silence, each member of Team 7 grappled with the realization that everything they thought they knew about strength, survival, and their own capabilities had just been fundamentally challenged. On the 7th day, Team 7 stood around their thriving base camp as the twin suns of Kepler 442c began their familiar dance across the amber sky. What had started as a desperate survival scenario had transformed into something that resembled a small research outpost more than an emergency shelter. The thermal regulation system hummed with quiet efficiency, its crystalline power cells fully charged and ready for another cycle. The water collectors gleamed like silver sculptures in the morning light, their condensation chambers already producing the day's first harvest of pure, life-giving moisture. Their food cultivation system, a marvel of improvised biotechnology, promised sustainable nutrition for weeks or even months to come. The base camp had become more than just a place to survive. It had become a testament to what could be achieved when different species combined their unique perspectives instead of competing with their individual strengths. Every system Marcus had designed incorporated insights from his teammates' diverse backgrounds, creating solutions that no single species could have imagined alone. Signal sent, Marcus announced, closing his communicator with a sense of completion that went far beyond simple mission accomplishment. Mission parameters exceeded. All primary and secondary objectives achieved. But none of them moved to pack up their equipment or prepare for extraction. They had discovered something far more valuable than survival techniques during their week on this hostile world. They had found a new understanding of what it meant to be part of something greater than themselves. I need to say something, Velena began, her ethereal form shimmering with what Marcus had learned was deep emotion. On the first day, I dismissed you as weak, Marcus. I looked at your lack of natural abilities and assumed you would be a burden to our survival. I was not just wrong. I was blind to the very qualities that would save us all. Her energy patterns pulsed with the equivalent of embarrassment and genuine respect. I have existed for 3 centuries, manipulating energy fields and phasing through matter as easily as breathing. But in 7 days, you taught me more about real strength than I had learned in 300 years of existence. We all made the same mistake, Gorth added, his massive stone form settling into a more relaxed posture. My people prize unbreakable strength above all other virtues. We believe that the strongest foundation is one that cannot be moved or changed. But you showed us that real strength isn't about being unbreakable, it's about learning to bend and adapt without losing your essential nature. 6Ra's predatory instincts had been fundamentally altered by their experience together. My species has spent millennia perfecting the art of the hunt, believing that the greatest achievement is to stalk and capture prey through superior physical prowess. But you taught us that sometimes the most effective way to succeed is not to hunt at all, but to create conditions where success comes to you naturally. Ninja stepped forward from a shadow that seemed deeper and more purposeful than before. His time on Kepler 442c had taught him new ways to think about darkness and light. I built my entire identity around the ability to disappear, to become invisible and untouchable. But you showed us how to create light in impossible places, how to build something visible and lasting that others could find and benefit from. Marcus looked around at his teammates. No longer just alien classmates assigned by bureaucratic necessity, but true comrades forged in the crucible of shared adversity and mutual discovery. Each of them had been fundamentally changed by their experience, transformed from individuals showcasing species superiority into members of something far more powerful. The title of this episode was Use It or Lose It, right? Marcus said thoughtfully, his eyes taking in the efficient base camp they had built together. I think we all learned what that really means, and it's not what any of us expected. What do you mean? Velena asked, her curiosity genuine and unguarded. It's not about using your natural abilities or losing them to environmental factors beyond your control. It's about using your mind to adapt and grow or losing the opportunity to become something greater than what you were born to be. We each brought our species' greatest strengths to this challenge, but we only succeeded when we learned to combine those strengths with new ways of thinking. As the extraction ship Valkyrie's wing appeared on the horizon like a silver star against the burning sky, Team 7 stood together in a formation that had nothing to do with military protocol and everything to do with genuine friendship. They had learned that true strength wasn't about individual superiority, but about collective adaptation and the courage to see beyond their own limitations. Commander Xylith was waiting for them at the Academy landing pad when they returned, her 4 arms folded behind her back in the familiar pose of authority. But Marcus caught something new in her silver eyes, a depth of respect that went beyond mere acknowledgement of mission success. Congratulations, Team 7. You are not only the first group to survive Kepler 442c, but to thrive there in ways that our most optimistic projections never anticipated. Your base camp systems are being studied by Academy engineers for possible implementation in real-world colonization scenarios. You have proven that cooperation transcends individual capability. Thank you, Commander, Marcus replied for the group, though each member stood with the quiet confidence of shared achievement. However, she continued with a slight smile that suggested she already knew their answer. This was only episode 5 of your final assessment series. The remaining challenges will test everything you've learned about cooperation, adaptation, and thinking beyond conventional limitations. The next scenario will require you to apply these lessons in completely different circumstances. Are you ready? Team 7 exchanged glances, and Marcus saw something in their eyes that filled him with quiet pride, complete trust in each other, absolute confidence in their collective abilities, and an eagerness to face whatever challenges awaited them together. We're ready, they said in unison, their voices carrying the harmony of different species speaking with one purpose.